Level up your hunting game and join the cause. Help preserve small-town Texas hunting culture and become a more successful hunter by learning the best ways to squeeze the most out of your budget and precious time out in the field. Welcome to the Feed Bandit Podcast. Here are your resident bandits, Richard Kinchlow and Jimmy Byrne.
Well, howdy, folks, and welcome back to another solo podcast. Corn Bandit coming back at you. First and foremost, want to apologize for the lack of episodes we've had in 2021. It's been a crazy year, and here we are only in mid-February. So, trying to get things back on track here. A lot of good stuff happening in our personal lives. That's kind of unfortunately taken effect on our work here, but we're getting back on track now. And it's 2021. It's been a bear of a year already. So. We're going to just jump right into it. So this is being done, recorded rather, just after this major Texas Arctic blizzard. And not saying that it didn't happen in Oklahoma and Kansas, it did. But I think in Texas is the least prepared for this, even though I think we were all kind of prepared for it. But it's just, just kind of helpless in a lot of ways. Obviously, the human toll has been catastrophic, and even more so the effect on people's homes and livelihoods has just been incredible, but incredible in a bad way, I should mention. So obviously, hearts and prayers go out to those folks that are affected by this storm. It's been, I've been here 40 years, and I've never experienced anything like this. So anyway, we're going to get down the road. We are Texans. We help each other, and you're seeing a lot of that exemplified right now with what's going on. So, keep on chugging away, folks. Spring is on the way. But thought this would be a good time to really talk about, to kind of rehash some of the things that we've always been talking about on this show and have for the last couple of years. And really they come into effect with a situation such as this. Also going to offer up some tips and some thoughts that I've kind of been collecting as we watch this story unfold. Obviously, again, this Arctic storm came down to Texas and just kind of whooped our butt. Let's be really honest. It seems like the further south it went, it became more ice than snow, and it really took its toll on the animals. In particular, the exotic game that so freely roams the hill country in South Texas areas really took the biggest hit, and that's just a real shame. Obviously, nobody wants to see any animal freeze to death. I don't care how much you hate it. But also it's people's livelihoods. We're starting to hear stories of ranches that offer exotic animal hunts such as black bug, axis, nilgai, where they're looking at scenarios of total losses. We're hearing, I lost 200 black buck, or I lost 200 axis, and a lot of that, there's a couple of factors, but a lot of it I think has to do with the fact that they've got shorter fur, thinner fur, as they say, and the axis deer and the black buck antelope hail from India. And so obviously over in India, you don't get a lot of snowstorms, at least I think where these animals are. I don't know. India may have mountains and all that kind of stuff, but at least where these animals come from, they don't. That said, a lot of these animals that are been used to stock these ranches have been in Texas for a long time, starting really probably going back, you could trace their lineage, going back to the 1920s when the YO Ranch brought them over from their native homes, where it's kind of ironic. They're struggling over in India, and we actually ship exotic animals back to them. So, but yes, the loss of exotic game has been catastrophic. And again, our thoughts and prayers go out to a lot of these ranches. So this may be a little premature, but it seems like some of the ranches that are a little further north seem to have fared a little bit better. I don't know if that is because the exotics that they have are maybe more used to this, to this type of cold. Maybe they're from a different bloodline, that was bred maybe up in Central Texas as opposed to Deep South Texas. Or the Hill Country. That's something I've always really been thinking a lot of. If I'm a rancher and I want to stock my property with black buck antelope, do you go get them in the Hill Country, and when you bring them up here, say to Wichita Falls or into Erath County, Texas. Okay, so a little bit further north. It obviously gets a little cooler up north than it does down south. So, is that going to affect them? Would a better decision be to buy them from a exotic rancher whose stock has been here in the north to central Texas? So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot since this thing is played out, because it seems like a lot of the mass die-offs, unfortunately, have happened in South Texas and in the Hill Country. So just something I've been kind of pondering. You're probably wondering, how did Rancho Bandido fare? So we got a lot of snow, definitely got some ice to this day, and this is probably a day or two after kind of the real subarctic temperatures. We have only lost one black buck antelope that I can figure out, or that we've at least seen. And I kind of take comfort in the fact that a lot of these antelope were hanging out a little bit closer to the house that's there, which they traditionally do anyway at night. So that allowed us to kind of put a finger on, how many we've got. Are we missing any? And so we think we may have only lost one. The silver lining for everybody in this type of scenario is that the exotics, they breed regularly. Okay. They're not like whitetails where they have a cycle per se. The exotic animals in Texas, at least most of the places, are still not on a real, a time frame. They say the axis deer, or I think they say they start to breed like in July now, and they're starting to see maybe that's a trend, but I have seen babies kind of all over the place, at least with our axis deer. So, that being said, I do think that these populations that were struggling, as long as they're obviously not overhunted, and these big game ranches certainly won't, they'll definitely come back and come back with a vengeance. So, man, these types of scenarios of these kinds of storms, they're kind of like the 100-year floodplain, right? You don't expect to see anything of this nature. And again, I can't recall any time where we had that cold of temperatures. In fact, I think the most recent, Arctic blast that hung around for a couple of days was in early December of 2005, and when we had Bandido, we had thunder snow. I mean, it was freaking nuts, and it got down pretty cold. It definitely got down pretty cold, but it was not this sustained cold where it's 3 or 4 days of sometimes the highs not even getting out of the getting above freezing, and that is what has inflicted the most damage on these herds. And let's not forget about the native wildlife as well. You're hearing a lot about songbirds not making it. White-tailed deer and turkey, things of that nature, have not seen any substantial reports of major death there. So we'll kind of see how that shakes out. Again, this is still pretty a pretty new event. So again, some of the things that I've kind of been thinking about is, how can you prevent something like this? Well, first, you can't. We've always said you can't play God, all right? You're never going to be able to dictate the weather unless you're, Storm from X-Men, where her eyes will get all white and glassy and she forms tornadoes, and that would be really cool, but we can't do that. So we've got to do what we can to prepare our property, whether you own it or you lease it, for an event such as this. And we can obviously semi-predict when these sorts of things are going to happen, because when do they typically happen? Well, in Texas, it seems like if you're going to have a major ice snow event, it's probably going to be in January and December, or January and February. Now, that being said, it's, it could happen in November. It can happen to December. I remember, having a snow event in Christmas ish. But again, it seems like the big ones are going to be in January and February. So with that being said, what are you automatically doing if you're a good steward of the land, okay, and you're trying to grow bigger deer or have more turkeys, okay? Well, you're supplemental feeding. And I'll tell you, at least since we've been doing this little show, there's never been a time since we've been doing this show where supplementing is more important than it is right now. Again, definition of supplemental feeding is it's basically being able to feed wildlife, but it's not their main food source. But it's there for them to help antler development, or in this particular case, to keep them alive. So I would definitely say those who were supplemental feeding, even if it's you just kept your corn feeder going after the season, are going to fare better, not only for the game species, but for the non-game species as well. So again, we talk about the benefits of protein pellets. Okay, so 20%, 16% crude protein pellets, regardless of brand. We talk about cottonseed, okay, and making sure that's out there. So if you had those two, again, plus, keep your corn feeders going. What the hell? Corn's a starch, it gives them a little jolt of energy, which they need when it's, the wind chills and the negatives. I think your animals will definitely fare better. That being said, we are seeing some reports come out of some of the areas in Texas that had exotics that really stepped up the supplemental feeding, and that's what we did at Rancho Bandido. All right, we kind of knew where the black buck were going to be in the evenings. Smart, they were some of them were actually hanging up against some of our outlying barns. We saw them there kind of in the evening and early in the morning. So what did we do? Well, we went out there and we actually spread some hay. Okay, and so obviously that's going to help when they lay down out of the wind. That's going to help their body temperature. But also, we put a lot of cottonseed out there. Again, it's got fat, it's got calories. Okay, and that's what's going to help get these animals going. So again, we talk about January 1st, getting those protein feeders going. If you've got cottonseed, get that going, because this is when especially the white-tailed deer, right, coming out of the rut. They're needing to put on some weight. They're needing to recover. And I tell you, speaking of, it'll be kind of interesting to see how the older white-tailed bucks fared in a scenario like this, especially further south where the rut happens a little bit later. They could still be in recovery mode. So will we see a bit of a die-off in South Texas, because of the storm? It remains to be seen. So again, we just cannot harp on the supplemental feeding enough. And again, it not only benefits the native game, the native game animals that we hunt, but also the non-game animals, such as the songbirds, things of that nature. Obviously, they are very important to the overall recipe. So something else that I've been thinking a lot of is that, again, we're seeing a lot of the reports of these die-offs happening in the hill country. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that obviously a lot of the exotic game is in the hill country. That's kind of where it got start. But, I can't help but wonder. I've seen a lot of those hill country ranches, and I'm not saying every one of them, okay? But I've definitely seen a lot of hill country ranches where they don't have their natural forage is just horrible. Their range conditions are terrible. And again, that's got a lot to do with, not only their situation as far as their soil is concerned. I mean, it's very rocky out there. It's not as though there's a lot of just flowing green rolling pastures. Obviously there are some, but the hill country is kind of known for its rocks. Okay. And so I can't help but think, because of some of the range conditions out there, that affected some of the animals as well. I mean, here they are, out there in this wind chill below zero type environment, and they may not be used to pawing through snow because they don't get a lot of snow down there per se as we do in central and north Texas. So did that have an effect on them? I can't help but think maybe it did. So so when you run into that type of scenario when the natural forage is covered or just not there, maybe even the supplemental feeding can't be enough to help them. So definitely something to think about. If you're out there, you're looking for a lease. Yeah, you want to be in the hill country because you're buying a place. Okay, you want to be out there in the hill country because you got your whitetail. I mean, it's a buffet of game. It's a lot of fun, but again, will this happen again? Probably. When? No clue, but something to think about. Okay, you don't want to get on a lease that's got more goats and sheep on there than they really need to, or cattle where they're just grazing this thing down to nothing because not only are they're going to eat up all the forage, but it's really going to hurt your game, and especially in a situation like this, even if you're supplemental feeding, I think you run the risk of having a pretty bad year. So, or a bad experience rather. Something else that I think is important is, and this one is a little, potentially maybe out of your power if you're a person who is leasing, but wind barriers. If you look at a lot of the hill country properties again, and this is the kind of my experience has been, in Kerr County in particular. I believe it's in Kerr County. And there's been a couple of them that I've actually had the privilege of being on. But, a lot of them, they have these oak savannas where it's just nothing but oaks and some natural grass, but they also got a lot of cedar trees as well. And of course, we know that these cedar trees are kind of the scourge of the earth, right? And they drink a lot of groundwater. Nothing grows below them because their canopy is so dense. Well, that kind of got me thinking, well, golly, that couldn't be a better, block against the snow and the wind than maybe these cedars. So I kind of started doing some sketching on a piece of paper, and I said to myself, if a guy could get a compass, all right, and go out there and find true north, all right, and then go on the true south side of a big cedar tree, okay, a big one, it's got the multi-branch that's really, that takes up, 10 by 10 yards, 5 by 5 yards, whatever it may be. And that person goes on the south side of that tree and kind of almost creates a little turkey blind. How we talked about that, how where you get some loppers or a chainsaw and you go into that tree and you start to hack out pieces to where you can two folks can sit back there comfortably and call turkeys. I kind of thought to myself, my gosh, what if we were to do that? Just a summer project. You do 5 or 6 trees a day, these big trees. Wouldn't that be a cool deal? So what you've effectively done is, again, you've got you go to the true south side of this big multi-branch cedar tree. You go in there and you kind of clean out and basically make a little shelter. And so that when the wind does blow, okay, you've got the north side of that tree that's blocking everything. If it's snow covered, that's going to give them even more insulation. So just a thought. And of course, the other side is it'll be ready for turkey season when you need it. And then obviously when the big heat comes, okay, maybe your deer will get underneath there to get some shade during the middle of the day. And of course, if you're leasing a property, something to consider is the rancher may love you for it because, during the heat, where do the cows go? Okay, when it's really hot, where do the cows go? They'll go up underneath those cedar trees. I mean, you can't miss it. You can see where they've been. So really, I'm actually considering trying to implement something like that on Rancho Bandido. Again, getting a compass, finding true north, and then going on the south side of a big multi-branch cedar tree, and then getting in there and just creating a little condo, if you will. And who knows if they'll ever use it, but hey, it's there in case they ever really want to use it. So, interesting thought, probably overthinking it as I do with everything, but just wanted to throw that little tip out there. Something else that I was thinking about is just how frustrating it was that I was stuck here in Dallas and that I couldn't be at Rancho Bandido. Now, of course, my situation with with the family. And then, of course, friends and family that are in need, no power, busted pipes, so on and so forth, really did not afford me the ability to go out there and be at Rancho Bandido to implement some of these things and to help and put feed out. Thankfully we've got kind of a team who does that, and that's hearty thanks goes out to them because they're in the area and they can do that. But if you're in a situation where you have the ability to get out to your property, I'll tell you what, especially if you're leasing it, the rancher's going to love you. As long as you've got, somewhere there that you can stay, that's going to be okay versus this incredible cold, so on and so forth, the rancher would love your help. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about during these big Arctic blasts is the water. I mean, water is an absolute essential element in any animal's survival. So without it, they're going to die. And I don't care if it's 115 or -5 with the wind chill. They've got to have water. And so, you see a lot of the stuff on the news and all the social media crap about these ranchers out there with axes breaking up stock tanks. Okay. Well, it shows the cattle around there because they're absolutely thirsty as hell. Well, don't forget your wildlife need that too. And so, if you've got the ability, and again, it's kind of dicey, whether you leave your house, again, if you have somebody capable that can help, your loved ones there, get out to your property, help that rancher. You never know. You might be able to score a discount because you were out there with that landowner, working the property, you're potentially saving, his stock's life. And of course you're going to be benefiting the wildlife as well. So again, probably easier said than done, but just something to think about. And then truthfully also, if you're out there, at least you can say, well, I put my best foot forward, that I did everything I could to try to help my animals. So again, boy, what a crazy event. Obviously the kids here in the city love the snow. Parents hate it, of course, well, because the kids were out of school, right? And then all the potential damage, but it really remains still yet to be seen what's going to happen with this whole scenario, what the ultimate effect is going to be. You can always use the moisture, but obviously this way has been very difficult. So again, I think the conclusion from this entire event, something that we can't stress enough, and we've been saying it for years, is supplemental feeding. It is absolutely key, and I think we can all say that supplemental feeding has probably helped a lot of animals out this past week and potentially kept them alive. I would also say that range conditions, you've got to watch your range conditions. In these types of scenarios, the storm popped up on everybody's radar, a week and a half ago. Everybody's looking at the weather, and then they're using the old Texas weather saying, well, you don't like the weather in Texas, just wait 30 minutes and it'll change. Well, in this case, it did change, but it got worse. And so at that point, there's nothing you can do about poor range conditions. It's not as though you can go pull cattle off a pasture or goats and sheep off a pasture and hopefully, your restoration of that pasture will begin. I mean, it's too late. So you've got to, again, if you're an owner, you got to think about those things, the balance between your livestock and your wildlife and what's more important to you. And I understand that sometimes, if you've got a place and you've got to have cattle, I totally understand that. But for these types of events that potentially could happen, starting in January, maybe you throw a couple extra bales of hay out there. Yeah, sure, it's expensive, but it'll give your pasture a break. Again, range conditions. I think if we had better range conditions in the state, this particular event wouldn't have been as bad. So anyway, again, thoughts and prayers and for everybody who's been affected by the storm. If you've got a story about your place, whether it's your lease or your land, let us know. We'll talk about it on the air. Cause again, this is developing news. It is still happening. And we are, we're interested to see how everybody fared. Hopefully they did well. Also give a big shout out to all those feed stores, not only in Texas, but really kind of around these affected areas. it amazes me, looking at the social media and all these feed stores in Texas, like Clifton Feed and Service. Those folks, they risked their own life and own safety to get out there and to open up their store to help people. Okay, that's at that point, it's not about money. It's never been about money for these small town feed stores. Okay, it's about helping out your fellow man, helping your fellow Texan, and again, that's been exemplified with this whole event. It's just been really great to see that. A lot of these feed store owners and probably even employees have risked their safety to come in and open up so that farmer can get or that rancher can get some hay or can get some supplemental feed, whatever it is. So again, hats off to them. That is what makes really this lifestyle, the farming and ranching lifestyle, so special. I highly doubt you would see, and not saying it doesn't happen everywhere, but I don't think you see that a lot in the big city. So anyways, that is all I have got for you today. Hope everybody is doing well, and we will see you next time on the Feed Bandit podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Feed Bandit podcast. If you like what we discuss on the show, be sure to sign up to our email list to get even more killer hunting ideas, tips, tricks, and exclusive deals on innovative hunting gear and services delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up over at feedbandit.com or simply by texting the word bandit to 33777. See you on the next one, and remember, support your local feed store.